Well, Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister says 10 foreigners have been detained in relation to last month's coup attempt, and more than 200 alleged plotters remain at large. Those comments came a day after more than 1 million people attended a cross-party pro-democracy rally in Istanbul. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan told the crowd it was clear the public wanted the death penalty to be reintroduced to punish the plotters. And he said he would sign it into law if Parliament took the necessary steps. His words, of course, come amid a crackdown that has seen thousands of military officers, judges, academics and journalists detained or suspended from their positions. Senior international correspondent Arwa Damon joins us now live from Istanbul. The president certainly tried to make a very strong case for the death penalty by pointing out that the US has it, as does Japan. Does he have much support there amongst lawmakers?
Well, he does, technically speaking, potentially have enough seats between those that his party has and those that the ultra-nationalistic party, the MHP, has as well, to potentially, possibly see something like this go through Parliament. And then, as you were mentioning there, he has said that he would approve it. He also does have, amongst certain elements of the population, Lynda, we have been hearing these calls for the death penalty, especially amongst his support base. But this is something that some of his opponents are quite concerned about, fearing that it would perhaps set Turkey back instead of allowing it to move forward. But one also has to take into consideration where the country is right now. That rally you were mentioning that took place yesterday, unlike any that we have seen, in the sense that millions of people came out, actually. Unofficial estimates put the number as high as about 5 million. We're still waiting to see what the official number is. But what's also significant is that this wasn't just an Erdogan, just an AKP, his political party, rally. This also was held jointly with two of the main opposition parties, the MHP and the CHP. Their leaders were there as well, really all attempting to put forward this image of a united nation. And it must be said that the country is, yes, united behind this notion that their government should not be brought down through a military coup, that democracy must prevail. But that does not necessarily change the fact that the president himself, when it comes to his opponents, does still remain a fairly divisive and polarizing figure.
And one of those reasons he is so divisive, particularly from an international perspective, is this continual purge of dissidents. Erdogan vowed yesterday at that rally to cleanse Turkey of all supporters of the exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen.
He did, and there has been this massive sweep that has taken place with tens of thousands of people either detained or been suspended from their jobs. And, you know, Turks who support the president and a fair number of others who actually don't. And the president himself will come out and justify this by saying, look, if anything like this had happened anywhere in the West, if there had been this sort of a military coup that came this close to succeeding in any other Western country, their nations would have taken the same extreme measures. And Turkey, and especially its government, do feel as if they are being unduly and overly harshly criticized by Europe and by the United States. And this is something that will potentially further strain the relationship between Turkey and Europe, but also between Turkey and the United States, because the government here feels that given the level of threat that it was facing, it is justified in its actions. And at this stage, there is more or less the support of the population that does stand behind, to a certain degree, the actions that the government is taking. But the nation is also at a crossroads. Can the president capitalize on this unity that we're seeing right now? Or if this type of crackdown continues, if these crackdowns are not adequately justified, will he then alienate those who are currently standing beside him?
Yeah, good questions there. Arwa Damon for us live in Istanbul. Thanks so much. Well, for more on all of this, I'm joined by Ege Seckin from London. He's an analyst with IHS Country Risk there. Good to have you with us. Turkey, of course, aspires to be part of the EU. Would a reintroduction of the death penalty essentially end any chance they have of securing membership?
Well, it's important to remember that the removal of the death penalty back in the mid-2000s was a symbolic step forward in terms of Turkey's EU accession bid. So it carries that symbolic value for Turkey's integration of the EU. And accordingly, to reintroduce it would be a clear message from the Turkish state and from the Turkish public that the intentions have changed at this point in time.
And when you say the intentions have changed, that EU membership isn't as important?
That seems to be the case. The Turkish bid for accession to the EU has really slowed down in the past couple of years, and that's partly because of the prioritization by the government of other issues. Of course, you have the Syrian crisis and various other regional problems that are really preoccupying the Turkish government. And of course, you have questions about the trend in democracy and the rule of law in the country, which have really decreased the motivation on the European Union's behalf as well. So what we see currently is a formal accession process that still seems to be on the table, but besides that, there's no true genuine motivation or gravitas on either side of the table.
The crackdown we've been seeing in Turkey has led to at least 18,000 people being detained or arrested. Thousands of workers have been suspended or dismissed. It is drawing a great deal of criticism, especially from EU leaders. One German leader likened Erdogan's moves to purge the state institutions to the Nazi party. What do you make of that?
I think I won't go ahead and question whether this should be compared to the Nazi party or not. But the problem from the perspective of the Turkish government is that the European Union leaders, and the US for that matter, who have shown so much interest in what is happening in the aftermath of the coup, during the coup attempt itself displayed a very ambiguous wait-and-see approach, which has really disillusioned and disappointed both the Turkish government and the Turkish public. And that's parts of the dynamic here at play. And this is part of the reason why the Turkish government is showing so much, is not happy with the situation. And we still have not seen such focus on the coup attempt itself and in terms of the support of Turkey's Western allies for the democratic standards in the country.
You talk about this wait-and-see sort of reaction from the EU and the US. What was Turkey expecting from them in the midst of the coup?
So what happened was we saw Russia very quickly and very cleverly make a statement supporting democracy and supporting the elected government in the country. Whereas the US, for example, their statement was focusing instead on stability and continuity, in Secretary Kerry's words broadly. And this was a very clear demonstration of degree of wait-and-see policy on their behalf. The Turkish government would have liked to see its NATO allies stand more firmly on their side in the midst of this crisis. And of course, this wait-and-see, this ambiguous approach was partly motivated by the distrust of the Western governments at this point of the Turkish government, and the fact that they're so unhappy with the trend in the democratic standards in the country and the rule of law, which has really deteriorated in the past couple of years.
Well, the Turkey president and the Russian president will meet today, so we'll see how that meeting plays out. Ege Seckin, great to have you with us. Thanks for your analysis.